All right. The promise of hybrid workforce. While we need to carefully adopt and adapt AI, we should focus on where AI agents are creating and providing real value. hmm Making us more efficient, breaking down barriers to interactive knowledge, once only available to a privileged few, and closing critical gaps in healthcare staffing, for example. By the way, so yes, Rania, absolutely. I want to share something about this right here. I think some of you know I have been doing kind of like this teaching of technology stuff for some time. But a lot of what I had done historically is I would do it kind of just where I am, whether that's in industry or university. So the universities where I did my undergrad, I taught. Where I did my master's and doctorate, I taught. And where I've been an adjunct at the three universities I've been adjunct of, I've also taught. And then I'll give talks in at various places, like the places that Rania mentioned. So I kind of run in similar circles to Rania. But maybe it was a couple years ago. Yeah, I was. Yeah, I think it was a couple years ago. I was walking to my class. Maybe it was. I think I was actually walking from my class. I had just finished teaching, and I teach at this university where it's just very big, and there's a bunch of students. And this is probably gonna sound really like, "Oh my gosh, Goju, what you're so slow." I am very slow, but it really kind of struck me is while I love the university that where I teach and all the universities that I've spent my time teaching at, one of the things that really became clear to me is there's such a selection bias for who gets the knowledge. And part of what was a little bit frustrating this year is this was one of the years where language models were really in their super hypey phase. And those of us, I think, on the bleeding edge that kind of can, again, distill the signal from the noise, I think we could look at this language model hype and say, yeah, this is hype. And there's more things in the world to know. But I, what I currently do is I teach graduate students, master's and doctorate students, which one would think are, they're very evolved in their ability to reason. And that's probably true. But I remember this year, there were like 50 students that were enrolled for my class. And within the first lecture or two, I basically said, I'm not going to teach language models because I think that there's enough hype and noise about them. I'm going to teach you how to do kind of like real things it's not hypey, it's foundational, and it's not going to go out of fashion in 2 years. And I remember that after that lecture, the registration dropped. Literally, I think 75% of the students dropped the class right after I said this. Coincidence? I mean, and it's not that I can't teach language models and transformers and neural nets. I've been teaching neural network architecture since way before it was cool, you know? Like, I was teaching neural network architecture when I was doing my graduate work at Boulder, as a grad student. So I know this stuff forwards and backwards. And I don't mean that arrogantly. I just mean like it's not going to take it's not going to take a lot of effort on my side for me to be able to teach this topic. Whereas something like anthropology, I would have to study for several years before I could probably teach it. But it was shocking to me that the students that uh, I thought were, pretty sophisticated in their ability to reason suddenly became completely checked out with the idea that I'm not going to teach transformers. And somehow, and again, I'm just being totally honest here. I'm probably going to say some things maybe I shouldn't, but what the hell? Um, it dawned on me that it was there was a certain level of entitlement. It was almost like, and I'm not trying to say this is always the case. I'm just saying that I think that sometimes in certain upbringings, especially those that are very affluent upbringings, it can be very hard to not create an environment of entitlement. Very hard. Like, for example, my dog, Merle, is super entitled, and that's my fault, right? It's not his fault, it's my fault. I'm doing a terrible job raising my dog, and so he's, he's a nightmare, right? And I know it, and my neighbors know it, and we kinda laugh about it because, he's just a dog. Uh, and that's not an excuse. I should be a better dog dad. So now extend this idea to humans, and now consider that you may have students that are in a place that are meant to learn and are expected to have maybe the wisdom or the deference to trust that the folks that are experts that are selected by that university or those universities have some degree of competency in knowing what is important and what is not, rather than just like what is fashionable. And what I saw was in this particular year, it was almost like this there was a sense of entitlement that the students, and I'm not trying to be negative, I'm just trying to share honestly how I perceive this, is I was trying to explain the problems with language models, and I was gonna explain why you this is not going to necessarily help the advancement of software development, not fundamentally, because these are stochastic systems, and also the economics don't necessarily make sense, which make it a non-starter, and that people are getting away using language models and systems like it today because companies are basically footing the bill until it gets enough adoption, and then they're going to invert it. It's very much like, I hate to say it, it's a drug dealer principle. That's why when you go to your local, don't do this, kids. But this is why generally the place that's distributing this stuff, the first one is free, or the first couple are free because they're trying to get you hooked. And then after you're hooked, then the prices will explode. And so you're seeing a similar thing. Like, I think take Claude Code, for example, is I think they are doing similar things. Same with Cursor is, oh, it's super cheap at first. It's only $20 a month. And then once you start using it, no, it's actually $5,000 a week. And those of us in the know, we know this. But there's so much hype and there's so much misinformation in mainstream media. And I have tons of people to blame for that. Uh, but I'll leave that to the side for now. So these things, I think, have problems, but many of us that are in the know, we know this. And so we're trying to make responsible decisions to make sure the next generation doesn't lose the opportunity to learn fundamentally important, critical things, and instead is focusing on the paint of the car, so to speak, instead of the engine or the aerodynamics or what makes that car run, right? Stop looking at the fancy, shiny, whatever. Instead, focus on the stuff that actually matters, like what makes that object move, these types of things. And in this moment of this eureka moment, I realized that I needed to have essentially a more global reach that, and I'm not trying to make myself a hero or anything. I'm just trying to share sort of what brought me in some sense to create GTT. Is that so? I still teach at this university, and I love it. It's I probably will teach there for the rest of my life, until or until they say, your service is no longer needed, and hopefully they never say that. The point is that even though I love this university, I have, I believe, a responsibility. And I think very much like how Rania views this, I know she and I are very much aligned, is those of us that have been gifted with, we've been very lucky to study or teach or be in the inner circles that have a lot of access to this knowledge that the rest of the world does not have access to. It is, in some sense, our responsibility to ensure it has global reach. It's critical because we need to be helping the whole world, not just a select few. At least that's my take. And this is not a political view. I'm not preaching to any particular party. I'm just saying what I personally believe. And part of this is just paying it forward. When I was growing up, uh, we were, we were not necessarily in a great shape, which is, I think, a really good thing. I think in some ways, I think those trials and tribulations have really helped cultivate who I am as a human. And I kind of think about things that Jensen Huang says, which is this whole idea like, I I wish you a life of struggle. I wish you a life of challenge and hardship. And it's not, I think, so he can be a jerk. I think it's motivated for the same reasons that I'm saying, is that I think those hardships can actually level us up significantly. Anyway, coming out of this rabbit hole, I think this is really important that we do break down these barriers and we create interactive knowledge like GTT. YouTube, I think, is doing this as well as potentially chatbots. I mean, obviously, I think the chatbots, their interactive knowledge is potentially better because it's like live. But I think there are other mediums that exist uh, that would be great. And again, this is still privileged because what is it like? Electricity, the internet, all that. But instead, like, so this is not perfect. I want to be clear. I'm sort of well aware of the hypocrisy of what I'm saying, but it used to be significantly worse. So, for example, if you take Rania's experience, she went to MIT. So the things that you learn at MIT are profound or can be profound. That I've spent some time myself at that university, and I'm good friends with many of the professors in computer science, and it's amazing. I just like to sit in their presence and just absorb the things that they have to share. But I have the ability to get on a plane and fly to Cambridge. Not many people can do that. So one of the things that MIT did is they created like this open courseware system where you can get a lot of the content online. And similarly, I'm trying to do a thing like that with GTT. And well, so it's still not leveling the playing field, obviously, because electricity, internet, computers, all that. But you no longer need to be physically at these places. That with the internet and the proliferation of technology, even in developing countries like India or Bangladesh, and I mentioned those two because those two countries are some of the countries where we have the most uh, viewers, the biggest viewership. Yeah, which I think is actually really cool. And by the way, YouTube, thank you so much. I think they are now actually translating GTT to Bangla. So I love that. I saw that in some recent update they sent me. So thank you, YouTube. I appreciate that. Anyway, I absolutely agree with what Ronnie is saying, and we do want to kind of close this gap. Sometimes failure is relative. Self driving cars have caused accidents, but their driving record is better than that of humans. Yes. This is also something that, man, this whole article is, I literally could give a 3-hour oration. I'm almost at that point on this. But this is something that I've discussed a lot with some of my fellow technologists is that when computer systems fail, it tends to be that humans have a significantly lower tolerance to those failures than if humans made the same mistakes. And so while self-driving cars on average, I think at this point tend to be notably better drivers than humans, if a self-driving car were to take a human life, there's like this sort of firestorm of reaction. And in some sense, I get it because it's unknown. People can't necessarily relate to the black box. You know, they just think, "Oh no, it's an AI that's gone rogue or something." And when something is unknown, it's very easy to become afraid or angry or, treat it as the other type of thing. Whereas if it's a human, you kind of think, "Oh, well, it was a kid," and like you can empathize. That being said, I think that it's actually kind of good that we do hold technology and these AI systems to a higher standard because I think that's just going to level them up more. I think that I even though it's unfair, and I know people in the autonomous vehicle driving space as well as the AI space that like are kind of frustrated with the the significant bias toward forgiving with humans, but the lack of forgiving for AIs, I get it. I'm right there with you, but ultimately, I think this just is going to level up our technology. Okay, continuing. As agents gain more autonomy and are assigned larger and more consequential tasks, as human workers become more AI assisted, and as physical AI continues to advance, manifesting AI in physical systems, the digital workers we've been talking about for some time are becoming a reality. Yeah, this is there's so much to unpack here. Like it would take me a week, but I want to zoom in on this piece. As physical AI continues to advance, manifesting AI in physical systems, I am quite interested in this, and for probably very peculiar reasons that are a little bit tangential from how most people are thinking about it. But I think that these physical AI systems can be extremely powerful in helping humans that otherwise wouldn't necessarily be able to help themselves, or uh, can help us explore things that were historically not possible to explore, like uh, walking on the surface of Mars or something, right? Going to fix a bridge, a suspension bridge, where a wire has dropped and uh, it's too dangerous for a human to go, but it needs to be fixed immediately because it's a hazard for all the other humans that want to drive on this bridge. So there's and doesn't require that much physical strength, but it requires sort of human level mobility and some level of strength. Like it might be hard for a drone to do, uh, unless it's like a fleet. Anyway, so this is I think a very interesting point, and I do think that these are becoming a reality. And as they become more and more a reality, these physical manifestations or interactions directly with humans are likely going to have consequences that are growing in size. So they're it's going to The consequences themselves are likely going to increase in seriousness. So there'll be like this threshold where the consequences before you say a wrong word and everybody laughs about it, no big deal. But now the consequences are, oh, you deleted a production database. Okay. So there's an increase in severity of the consequences, but there's also an increase in the volume of errors, is that these systems are likely going to permeate every domain. Sort of, this is the inevitability that I see, at least in my head. Every domain is going to be using AI, just like every domain is using software. And with that, there will be more and more of these. Come on up, buddy. The doggy is joining the party. There you go, bud. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're getting close. We're almost done. He is he is so sick of this. Okay, come on. You just rest with me. So this is becoming a reality, and I think that there's a depth and a breadth aspect to this that we'll probably want to consider. All right. We're seeing more than ever a push towards a hybrid workforce of humans and AIs working in symbiosis. Yes, this year Moderna took a bold and controversial leap in this direction where it made a digital group which includes AI initiatives report to its HR leader, thereby expanding Tracy Franklin's role to that of chief people and digital officer. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. So to to say in another way what I think Rania is saying here is as these AI systems become more ubiquitous, you could think of them as fleets of things, just like fleets of human workers, you have fleets of AI workers, and you may need oversight on those AI workers very much like you would have for human workers. At least this is what I'm getting from it. The emergence of hybrid workforce blending humans and machines together is as old as the Industrial Revolution. Absolutely. Robots and digital applications have been working alongside us for decades. Yes. What's new is the potential for agents to outperform humans on a range of tasks that have been uniquely human, requiring a level of education of what we think of as intelligent. Yeah, I mean, I I see what you're saying, Rania. I would probably have like a slightly different take on this, and that, yeah, I mean, what about compilers though? Right? Compilers are doing really sophisticated levels of transformations, and calculators have been doing this. And while I think you and I could take a step back and say, well, both of those things are hard coded rules. So it's different in the case of AI because they're not handcrafted rules, they're learned. But I would actually argue that it's kind of the same, at least the way that I think about it today, is that the human crafted rules are learned through data that humans have observed, and the humans have essentially distilled rules from that data and then hardened them. The ML systems, I think, are doing basically the same thing in that they are you have an ML system over here, so it's no longer a human agent. And it's doing the same thing the humans would do, is it's going out and it's learning from this data, and then in some sense it's distilling out rules. It's pulling those rules back, and the rules then are the algorithms that we use for whatever this thing is. And so I yes, is that an extra level of intelligence? I mean, it depends on how sort of like epistemological and philosophical we want to get, because some what I think would argue it's just pattern recognition. And I'm not sure exactly how I feel about this, but I do think that there is a lot of pattern recognition going on. And I don't know. So I this is one where I think you and I could have a 2-hour debate on, or not necessarily a debate, but like a conversation about what this actually means. Is this higher order intelligence, or is this just compiler level pattern matching that's done in a more broad way? I don't know. I'm not sure. Uh, this blurring This is blurring the lines of how we evaluate performance and how we assign value. This new dynamic is precisely what workers are grappling with. A recent Stanford study on the future of work with AI agents confirms that most workers don't want full automation, but rather a collaborative partnership with AI. I have many thoughts about this. The one thing that I want to share, and again, maybe this is naive, maybe I'm just kidding myself, but yeah, I don't think so. And that is basically this idea is, as we move more and more into the virtual world, I think that we will we will offload as much as many jobs as we can that are physical in nature, because we can have systems like these AI systems that are extremely efficient at these physical tasks, and instead humans will principally do work in a virtual space, and that virtual space will essentially be unbound. One, I think that the virtual space hones in on things that humans are really good at doing anyway, which essentially is critical thinking and being creative and using our minds. Like, again, if we are at the top of the uh, food chain, I don't think it's because of our physical prowess. I think part of it has to do with our ability to collaborate with each other and function as a group and strategize. The other part is we have very sophisticated minds that allow us to do deep reasoning, which other animals may not be capable of. So, in the virtual space, why not lean into this and continue to drive forward on one of the things that we're the best at, which is essentially critical thinking, using these super powerful, uh, cognitive machines that we have. Given this, what I believe is there there is sort of no this notion of full automation doesn't exist, because the moment the machines are capable of doing something in a way that is fully automated, then humans will just evolve to the next harder, higher order thing. And given that it's a virtual space, the number of jobs and activities are unbounded. There is no limit. Whereas in the physical world, there is. There is a physical limit of things that can be done because the physical reality has limits in space, that there's only so many things that you can put in a room, no matter how well you pack it, right? There's only so many ways that you can uh, go from point A to point B. And therefore, creating new jobs in a physical space, it's different because it's limited. It has some upper bound, essentially. Whereas the virtual space, my strong conviction is it's unbound. And because of that unboundedness, it essentially creates an opportunity where we can be doing an infinite number of things. And so there'll never be a point at which there are not jobs available. That's my strong conviction. Okay. Uh, we can join the heated and exciting arguments about whether these machines are in fact exhibiting intelligence and how far we are from. Oh, yeah, I'm not even. I don't love this term. I see AI is a natural part of digital fabric, enabling a continuum of human and digital interaction. We see the seeds of this in natural programming, in extensions of Donald Knuth's concept of literature programming, vibe coding, and spec coding, where human language and code are merging to form the core of modern digital applications. Uh, if we're able to help avoid moral crumble zones through better attribution, and if we aim to move towards hope and away from hubris, our focus as technologists now is on building openly and with global community robust platforms that can provide the technical foundations that can underpin emerging business operational layers and processes that are well suited for this latest iteration on human machine collaboration. Let's make AI boring again. Let's do that, Dr. Rania. Excellent. So there you have it from Dr. Rania Khalaf. Huge fan, and please leave your leave your comments below. I'd love to hear what all of you think. And uh, the doggy and I are uh, saying uh, good morning and good night to all of you. Thanks, everybody.